including the highly acclaimed Hotel Arcadia, and 3 non-fiction books, including Amitabh Bachchan for the BFI Film Stars series, and A Bollywood State of Mind, a journey into the world's biggest cinema. Her latest book, Refuge, Stories of War and Love, is a collection of short stories spanning continents and decades that turns its lens on those who are often overlooked in stories about war, women and children, civilians forced out of their homes in terror, those who wait for their brave soldiers to come home, and soldiers who commit unspeakable violence. This powerful collection simultaneously delves into the darkest parts of the human psyche, whilst being an ode to humanity's ability to endure, love, and retain dignity and compassion. In 2017, Sunny launched the celebrated Jalak Prize for Literature, which now includes awards for children's and young adult, poetry, and prose. She is the publisher of the biannual Jalak Review. Born in Varanasi, she currently lives in London, where she is Professor of Creative Writing and Inclusion in the Arts at London Metropolitan University. If you wouldn't mind joining me for a round of applause for our panel, our chair, and the conversation we're about to have.
Hello, and good evening, and thank you for joining us at, we're not quite sure what a literary cabaret involves, but you're going to get it. Hopefully we'll have some great poetry and readings from 3 incredibly brilliant emerging writers. I've got a weird hat on because I will also share just a short couple of bits of reading from my own book, which is here. We'll have a conversation and hopefully we'll have time for some questions from you towards the end of this event. Do keep in mind it's supposed to be a cabaret. Do hoot, do clap. Welcome to Shimmy if you'd like. Join us. But first I'll introduce our panelists. So let me start with Esme. And I'm off now of that age when I have to do this mad thing with my spectacles, so just bear with me. Age gets to all of us. Esme Allman is a poet, writer, and theatre director from South London. Her work explores history, imagined worlds, and desire within the context of Black femininity. She has been commissioned to write poems for the Barbican Centre, English Heritage, the Institute of Contemporary Art, with BBC Radio 3 and Radio 6, NHS Arts and Heritage, Pace Gallery, and Poetry versus Colonialism, in conjunction with London Metropolitan Archives. She'll be reading from Sweet Bone Girl, which is her debut collection of poetry, and it's ace, but also pulling us back into some of her earlier work. Joining her are 2 poets from this incredible anthology. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Mymona Bibi is a Bengali British writer, creative facilitator, and ESOL teacher based in Newcastle upon Tyne. She's interested in themes of cities, multilingualism, inequality, and home. Her writing has been featured in the Ilkley Literature Festival, Magma Poetry, Butcher's Dog, and Lumpen Press. She has produced and performed at events such as Newcastle Fringe Festival and Novum. Currently, she's the lead artist of the World Writes Multilingual Community Writing Group. I will check later and make sure that our Twitter handles, or not Twitter, but X handles and various other social Insta, etc., are made available, but I won't read it out at this moment. And finally, there is... There is Simran Kaur Johal, who writes in spaces lingering between memory, language, and the weight of being seen. She writes with the intention of an intuitive grasp of the personal as political, outlining reflections on resistance, identity, and the quiet forces that shape our lives. Outside of her prose and poetry, she writes reviews on literature, music, and film, with a recent interest in the life and work of Labi Siffre. Now, tonight's theme is love and rage, or rage and love, and hopefully you'll see a lot of that in the work that we read and discuss with you. But first of all, I think I'm going to start with you, Simran, if you don't mind, to kick us off.
Let me just get, sorry. Well, I think my contribution today sits more in the area of rage. For me, it's about a lot of paranoia and being really, really new to accessing the emotion of rage. I don't know about you guys, but feeling angry did not come easily to me. So I'm throwing the question already off myself, but what about you guys? Like, is rage something that you experienced easily, or did it come with the, like, battle with yourself, the paranoia, and just that thing of, am I really an angry person? Because that's what I'm dealing with lately. I'm still untangling that, so I'd love to hear from everyone.
I think that's quite an interesting thought, because I think it happens to a lot of people, especially as like a teenager. Because as a kid, you can kind of be angry because you'd probably just cry and then you'd just be a kid. And then at some point you're like, oh, I can't cry anymore, but I have this really weird, loud thing inside of me. And I think it took me years to realize and to learn through activism and community work that rage means something and comes from a place and has somewhere to go. And then it took me many more years to put that into writing. But yeah, I think the experience you're like talking about is quite common. Yeah.
Probably similar, actually, in terms of, I mean, I think anger is both racialized and gendered, as we know on this stage and here. And so then spending this time when you kind of are like, and then being permitted to feel angry. I'm usually angry in community. Anger feels like sometimes a bit of a solo emotion as well, where you're trying to contain it. And this rage, this sense of kind of like this, I think with rage comes this sense of unfairness, and that you want things to be different, this kind of debilitation sometimes in wanting change. In my craft, it's fun because I think when I'm writing about rage, I'm usually doing it hopefully with some sense of laughter, or there's something that kind of has to pair with it. Maybe if the rage is the primary emotion, then hopefully there's a secondary emotion that can kind of be its counterbalance in its exploration.
It's actually quite funny because I have to say, the best thing about menopause is to live in a state of rage. It's brilliant. And but what's really also interesting, and I love the way you said that, Esme, about anger feels solitary. Rage feels collective. Rage comes from love. Rage is driven by love. And it's communal. It's collective. It's shared. And I definitely think that I'm enjoying the rage. And I'm really enjoying that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to the enjoyment part. I'm currently, just to situate myself here a bit for everyone. I think I'm a bit younger than everybody else here, so I'm everything feels new. And when everything feels new, it just hurts, it burns. It's just like, I don't really know what to do with it, where to place it. So yeah, I can't wait to enjoy it. I'm glad that's on the horizon, so... Yeah.
Shall we hear some of that rage from your wonderful piece?
Of course. Okay, sorry. Okay. I'm not sure how I should do this. Okay. So I'll just say a bit about the piece. It's called Broken Parrot, Warrior Tongue, and it's sort of written in these shifting vignettes. There's no real narrative sort of until the end, actually. And it's just about my because sometimes you hear the word racism, and that's fine, but when you really, really, really feel it, it's a totally different thing. So for me, understanding that some people really, truly don't think I'm human, it was a recent realization, and there can be as much chatter about it as you want. You can show up to as many rooms as you want, but when you really, really feel it in your heart and soul, totally different, and body. So I wrote this actually 2 years ago when I first came to university and realized what that was. So yeah, that's what this is about. It's just my thoughts as I was kind of growing and further realizing that, okay, some people really don't like me, and I can't do anything about it. But then I did do something about it because I wrote it down. The first section is called Kid in a Candy Store. I'm just a kid in a candy store, lost and looking for something I can't find. It's an aching feeling that makes me want to cry. I wish I knew where it was. I want to ask the sales assistant for the shelf, the aisle, the store. I'm just a kid in a candy store, lost and looking for something I can't find. I'm small, looking for big things. Why do I want to own it all? My mum likes to remind me I won't have anywhere to put everything. But somehow I'd like to know that I could shove it away instead of all that empty space under my bed, better than the monsters. I'm just a kid in a candy store, and I grew up. But I never lost the desperate tantrum. It lives on, mean and hungry in my sneering lip. Never got what I wanted, never knew what I wanted, just knew that I wanted. Now I feel unwanted, and that makes me all shades of stupid. I can't tell if the light or a darker fits me better. Does this kind of thing go with a scarf and my curly hair? Does it match the frenzy of being 20? I don't need to worry about which way to go. I just need to go. But for some reason, I can't move my feet. For some reason, I'm stood still, and the whole world is moving around me. I'm seeing everything on the spinning atlas, and I can't take any of it in without it feeling like I'm a looter. The stars, I want to steal them to have a sparkle in these brown eyes. The people walking past red buses and zebra crossings, I want to put them in a poster, hang them on my wall. What a loser, desire-filled, empty-headed, cold in a sauna, laying on the ground while I'm falling through the sky. Meaning disease. Wake up, my dad tells me, and I turn to look at him. Spoon of cereal crackling in my mouth, hair disheveled, pajamas still on. What the hell does he mean? Maybe he's onto something. In what ways am I not awake? Let me think. No point. So I tell my dad with all my wakefulness, my eyes are open. He laughs at me, patting my head. It has to mean something to be awake. Opening your eyes, you think that's all it takes? Why, yes, I do. I don't understand him. Damn, maybe he's on something, not onto something. So I close my eyes really tight, and I open them again. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, I tell him. Probably some kind of old age disease, this meaning thing. But I think I'm getting a tickle in my throat. Edinburgh to London and back. April, Edinburgh, 11 a.m. There's me walking through it. I wonder if it matters that I'm here. And where does all that mattering go? In its medieval buildings, its pissed-on walls, the people in Princess Street Gardens? Nah, I don't think so. Then again, if that building, that wall, those people, that park can matter to me, maybe I stand a chance while I'm waiting at the crossing. Did anyone look at me and notice that I'm just a kid in a candy store, lost and looking for something I can't find? April, Edinburgh, 7 p.m. Coughed my way around the city, kept on taking trains at Waverley just to learn my own name, wondered about how my face looks to the people on the platform in the window of a carriage pulling away. Is she funny? Is she sad? Is she dreaming? Is she fighting? I hope she's a funny fighter. Tongue out, eyes crossed. That's the real ticket. Into where? I'm not sure. When it matters, I'll let you know. And I hope no one saw just how taken I was with my own reflection, smiling at the faded image of me instead of those houses and hills. I forgot the world when I stood before it. I'm just a kid in a candy store, lost and looking for something I can't find. And sometimes I wonder if that thing might be me, but that's not quite right. June, London, 5 p.m. I'm on the train home, and every time this thought occurs, why does this feel like the beginning of a film? And then I think about how there's no plot. And I see why films like to cut and fade to black. That's what's happening here. All these small moments might mean something. These instances might finally be what I've been looking for. So I hang on to these things. Me walking with a suitcase and 3 bags dangling off my shoulders. Me drinking coffee by a window with a good view. You don't know how good things are about to get. Bag snaps off my shoulders. View gets ruined by a face that I know. Fin, fade to black, roll the credits. There's only one name. No one remembers it. So I'm told I should pay attention to the signs regardless. Notice the moments when life is on my side. Religiously, I make 11 and nothing happens. These angel numbers, I should just be grateful. Is that how it is? August, London, 8 p.m. The sound of the rain in my already soaked brain takes nothing to make a puddle in this place. Words are over and on my head like flies on a lion's face. In metropolis desert, I am prowling through the busyness of a city where nothing is actually happening. Summer's gone, my eyes were barely open. I'm always exhausted, still lost and looking for something I just can't find. I need a summer for the summer. September, Edinburgh, 10 a.m. It's uneven, but here I am. I am here. As I walk through Nicholson Street on the way to my new flat, I read the graffiti on a wall lined with bins. Where the lost things go, they grow. Speak, not so easy. Let me tell you about an anger I have. It's so serious that it can't be spoken. Before reaching my new flat, I'm knocked into 1,000,000 times by tourists, given dirty looks because the locals think I'm a tourist too, with these bags, my sunglasses sliding down my nose. Is a student still a tourist? Maybe. This wouldn't mean too much if it wasn't for the flashing image of me past shop windows, sweaty and brown and all this white. I wish I wasn't so paranoid all the time, that me walking to my new flat could just be part of the hustle and bustle. But why does that man stare feel charged? Why is it while I'm waiting at the bus stop, messy hair and badly buttoned shirt, I feel like I'm an animal to them? I keep wiping sweat, wishing I could wipe myself off myself while I'm at it. Why do I do this? All day I rack my brain for it. I try to write the prettiest lines, the longest words, but I can never say what I mean. I try and play these games at these points where I can excuse myself. Or, like, this isn't my language or country anyway. I only live in Empire Island. I'm not actually part of it. Then again, I know more English than Punjabi, so what am I even talking about? And I'm here right now. I've always been here, so why can't I just be part of it? But I'm a joke to where I'm from, colourful contradictions that they don't want to get to know. I'm a mime in the now where I am, drawing invisible boxes and banging against thin air. See, that's just not it. I smack my lips and curse my tongue. When I'm opening the door to my flat, I immediately notice what's outside the window across the street. Don't take in any of the rooms or check if anyone else has moved in. In the window of another person, I'm seeing something that just can't be ignored. I drop my bags, forget that I need to pee, and stick my hands up against the window to watch. There's a parrot sitting in a brown cage. It's green, like the colour of grass, but its stomach is a burnt orange sand from Mars. There's a big pink carnation in its beak, and at first I thought parrots and its blushing pink flowers a pretty picture. But she's making this face that's sort of horrifying. See, her eyes are crossed. She's constantly darting them around. Her tongue has fallen and flopped out of her mouth, wriggling from time to time under and over the flower. I stay at the window for a while, just watching the strange parrot. I'm pretty sure she's watching me too. Let me tell you, this anger I have, it's so serious that it's silly, so it's never spoken. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Anger indeed. Esme, shall we hear from you? Slight shift in tone and, well, not the rage, but definitely a bit of change in genre and tone.
Yeah. Simran, it's a joy to follow you as well, because I think as you were reading, I was kind of this repetition of kind of like I'm a kid in a candy store, and this kind of sense of want, and how can it can incite this kind of this fatigue, this kind of I recognize the feeling. But I also like this idea of kind of this wanting, because it's also quite a live wire. So I hope that we can kind of have that connection there. I'm going to read a bit from here. I hope you enjoy these poems. Love and Rage. We'll see if we can identify them. I walked up Arthur's Seat today. So my partner's not been to Edinburgh before. And I said, I was kind of like, Love and Rage, what are we thinking? And I thought actually a lot of the poems in here might sit between the camps. So I'll see if you guys can identify which is which, what your interpretations are. Amazing. This first one is called Love Letter. After Lynette Yadom Boache's Citrine by the Ounce. Black men get beautiful like that, blooming in autumn when no one's watching, tangled, eyelashes from fistfuls of sleep, beard plumage, a hand-grabbed bouquet, nappy-headed, halo-faced. He lights the kitchen to daybreak and the sun hemorrhages at the glass. His chin cleft valleys, and with a voice that climbs up the flat of his nose, coffee granules lodged under his nails, Adam's apple, rolling up his neck, loosening at his collar, clerical-like, hairs sprouting at the open buttons. I wait for him to blink up at me and reveal two hazel green, brown black eyes, feline with bite. Instead, stems of dark rum crawl along the inside of my glass, a sharp exhale darting through pursed lips. He doesn't flinch. Sickbed for Auntie Constance. She's not wearing a bra. Her hospital gown droops, whole body a lopsided smile. Turmeric-stained fingers giving her figure teeth. The heart monitor steadies, and she raises her arm in the evening's dim. Tea light flickering from the bedside table. 4 get-well-soon cards, a vase of dying, lilies, and our shadows make the room sentient. She keeps readjusting her imaginary cleavage, even tells me to keep my eyes up. I apologize, sinking into the bed still warm from her cluster of bones and her cells, the cells in their multitudes, eating away, not saying anything. Her legs sprawl out, hang off the end of the bed. Her elbow propped up on the armrest, propping up her chin, cradled in her palm. The nurse brings another pillow, and it squashes under her weight. Her face obscures as she turns to the wall, a foot, then a calf, last a thigh, launches into the room, throwing itself over her lap. She holds her glass, demanding another. Oh. This next one is called February Poem. The first 2 poems were written after 2 paintings by Lynette Yadom Boache, who's a brilliant artist and painter, and she does these figures that you think are portraits, and they're all completely invented from her head. And I think there's something about going to a gallery and maybe kind of falling a bit in love with some images, because you can recognize how they might sit and maybe resemble people in your own life. But those 2 are quite light. I wrote the first one's a sonnet. Love. And the second one actually I think is teeming with a bit of rage. It's the healthcare system and what it's like to go through that. February poem. I go for a walk. The morning is tight-lipped, tempting spring. I'm learning my body. Again, a knot of hunger gnaws a crater into my stomach. I fill it with want, watching my neighbor enter and leave their home. It takes everything not to greet strangers on the street, how there are other ways to say, I'm lonely. A red brick wall is blasted in a shaft of light. It's rained somewhere far away. Petrichor wafting from the gutters. I'm surprised by the soreness of my hip bone. A full and protruding pelvis. There I am, as I pat the flesh on my abdomen, ignoring the stinging sensation inside. When I return, the wake of my morning dishevels the flat, abandoned mugs, toast crusts on my plate. I exhale where there is only sunlight. This next one. This next one's a long one. Anyone watch Selling Sunset here? Thank you. Singular person. It's an absolutely deplorable show. It might be what people call a guilty pleasure. So thank you. I see you. I feel seen. But for context, this is a show about luxury real estate in LA. You fake documentary type beat on all these wonderful, very beautiful people sell luxury real estate, and then you're super outraged because you're like, there's so much homelessness in LA, and it's really bad. And what on earth? But I was really intrigued by this kind of racially ambiguous woman who's on the show, and kind of how they just read her and her race and her gender, and the times that it was omitted and it was like, no. And then the times when it was, then she was the sassy black friend. This is Amanza from Selling Sunset shares some thoughts. And it's kind of like framed as like, she's in her interview. If I was brave enough, I'd do an American accent, but they've got Chelsea on the show now, who's actually from Northwest London, so my accent will, yeah. All right. I mean, sure, I've said some things. Who hasn't? We're all cave-mouthed here, lips, Botox plump, straight from a rap video. My lips? No, honey, my daddy's black. You'd want to do what to him? Ew, gross. What's my secret? I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I keep this white gay guy chained beneath my ribs. Each morning, he rattles at my chest, whining. It's the wrong way round. I threaten to stop my heartbeat. I need him, his baselessness, his spite, because, what the hell? To stay in this game, I start a rumor. I'm a hoe. You didn't hear it from me. I walk wavy, make women hold glares between their teeth and tongue. The men follow. Is this what it is to be lightning? To be bleach, striking? I'm a mother now. I don't have time to love my baby off of the internet. Right now, I'm super into acting. I'm playing a character, playing house with a caricature husband. Everything smells like dead sunflowers. This is what being a woman is. Gleaming your own sunset, runwaying down sunset, heels horrid, deadly. The sun shining. I'm back at Starbucks. Not because I want this, but because of Christine. She needs to feel entitled. So careless as to hold her laptop and coffee in the same hand. Christine hovers. 2 weeks after giving birth, I was back doing Pilates, headstands. It's good for sex. We're at a party for Mary's dogs. All of us. Wearing deranged veneer smiles. My stub-tooth grin sat somewhere at a Turkish hotel, packing her bags for flight. Someone's thrown in the pool. My blowout kinks in the LA heat, and I think about crying. I think people know. Another drink is thrown. I've just had a baby. I don't need all this drama. Think Louis Vuittons, breasts, whatever comes in pairs. There are no friends here. Only a black girl you pity, because you don't know if she's black or not, until she's no longer ashamed, till she becomes that very pity. And all the white girls are just walking BBLs, acrylic nails, and a bad attitude stolen from Paris Hilton, who probably stole that from some poor black girl. Now we're talking. Actually talking. Literally talking. Christine's hair is cane road, tucks a loose strand behind her ear. She smiles. Doesn't quite reach her eyes. She clears her throat. Mary, 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 Mary. Nothing but concrete. Thank you. Ridiculous poem. I don't know what kind of psychosis you have to live in, but I'm also obsessed with it. So what does that say about me? I've got 2 more poems to read you. That's okay. This next one is probably one of the oldest ones in the collection. And and I thought it was a really nice one to bring. So I wrote it after Cecily Tyson passed away, a wonderful actress, wonderful, this whole legacy of, I love this, of just kind of a history in film and television, and she was with Miles Davis for a stint, and they just looked phenomenal together. They just were brilliant. But I wrote this poem, which is just in a kind of fun style, when I was kind of interested in playing with the form like this to kind of, show appreciation. Premiere. I knew she was mine all along. I was just waiting for them to find out. Cecily Tyson. Is that what knowing looks like? I want to know everything. Slip knowing into a gold clutch bag. Seize knowing with the same ease of her throwing a pair of white gloves over her forearm, forefinger, thumbing the glow on her trophy, standing, the rehearsed elegance of knowing. Somebody old and black recalls it as an inelegant time, miles jazz-eyed, guarding behind a pair of sunglasses, a room full of sunglasses and their bug-eyed stares, half-crescent moon mouth, left arm in bra, accustomed to emptiness, hands naturally crescent, neck taut from smiling, grin raising her sternum, white dress clinging, neckline down to her sternum. Is that what knowing looks like? I want to know. A new one. Girl band. This will be my last one. Girl band. We warm up until we become one. Jagged breath each morning, the mirror is a hateful teacher. Dance studio, roaring sweat and bass of fruit-scented perfume. In the choreography, we splay our hands on each other, melt up the body, engage the vertebrates of each finger. The small of her back glistens. I like the way it caves at her spine, how I feel it hard with work and chance jeans, well fitted for a future, for a pretty girl. In one song, I was center, soloist. My sports bra slipped, exposing the skin. Pinkish, she body rolled into position, facing me, her back to the audience, cupped my breast, tucked me in. My voice chased a harmony we didn't rehearse. Back at the house, I hear her familiar knock after lights out, slips through a crack in the door, the dark turning exquisite. Her hands and mine turning into each other's so much, so I stroke myself, delighting at the new touch, her nipple, powder, purple, its rhinestone outline decorating the soft of her. Flesh, I slip it in my mouth, she tastes of Hollywood. A bigger version of our childhood excess, like maybe we'll make it out of here, make it back. At the dance studio, we rehearse her solo. I step on her toes. I forget to spot when I spin. She shoots me a look where her tongue lands on her lip, Britney mic hanging on her side, pulsing, body silken by her sweat, that I bet her back is a landing strip. Thank you.
Thank you. That was marvelous. Mymona.
Thank you so much, both of you. I mean, you're right to, you're like, we'll have a change of genre, and that change really added something. Wow, wait, I can't wait for our conversation. Now I need to read. Before I start reading, I'll tell you a little bit about, earlier we were talking about where we came from and things like that. And it's interesting, I grew up in London, and then after studying, after COVID at some point, I decided that actually London wasn't the place for me, and I moved to Newcastle, where I live now. But what I didn't mention to you guys earlier is that I still can't stop writing about London. And the thing is, me and my family, we've moved around a lot. And so I write a lot about home and what it means to look for home. And the poems I'll read today, most of them are set in domestic spaces, all different versions of the houses I've lived in. Right now, I've lived in the house that I live in now for 4 years, which is the longest I've ever lived in one place, and it's making me very uncomfortable. So my contribution to the Hajar Book of Rage is an application form for social housing. I've written 3 application forms for social housing. It's always hell. Before I start reading this, I'm going to look at our sound person, Ashi. Start, and then I'll start. Thank you. Application for social housing in Tower Hamlets. Please fill in block capitals: first name, surname, other names, date of birth, address, postcode. Are you subject to immigration control? Under 18? Not living in the borough? Not in housing need? Guilty? Receiving an income of more than £90,000 per annum? A homeowner? Please circle the appropriate answer. Does the ceiling you're under ever leak and cave when your eyes are closed? Yes? No? Not sure? My eyes are always open. How many rooms do you need to store all your nightmares? 1, 2, 3, 4. Have you or any members of your household slept through the night in this house? Not including the voices. Yes. No. Not sure. My eyes are always open. Where are your children? And where have they been whilst you've been filling out this form? They are everywhere, spilling from bed to toilet to street. Their screams are almost as loud as the letterbox clicking shut behind the neatly folded bills. Will this envelope be big enough to seal me and them and all this noise until the cladding is removed? Thank you. It still makes me uncomfortable to even read that because, any application form you have to fill in is hell, but to apply for a house is really hard. And I think when I moved to Newcastle, it was the first time I didn't have to apply for a place. And I was like, oh my God, I have to be angry before I walk into my home. So that's pure rage. The next poem I'll read is something I wrote one day when I was living in London, and I looked out and all I saw were police officers, and which wasn't a new thing to see. But I remember just walking back in and being like, come on, kids, let's just go back home. And we just didn't go out that day. This is called Ghazal for My Bandhu. Ghazal for my bandhu. What is spilt stays in the street. The roof itself empties onto the street. When the nails and screws fell, they clattered onto the street. Your blood and its smell, oh bandhu, I found them caked on the street. The door could not prevent police that came from the street. I'll smile my smile at the thieves across the street. Lights are flashing and shadows shriek from the street. When your hand is in mine, silence rings from the street. So what do you think, Bondo? Will we win today's fight in the street? So I write a lot about streets and houses and the city landscape, the urban landscape. And it's quite interesting to me what we do as people to those spaces and what those spaces do to us as well. The next poem I'll read is called Country of Desire. And this was something I wrote so I used to be part of a writers collective called Brown Girls Write, and everybody in the group was like, oh, let's write about love, and I was like, ew, I don't want to do that. And then I realized, and I think it was something one of you said earlier about desire and love coming together, and rage coming together. There's something about wanting that is so close to being angry. And I think it's really similar to what you were saying about the kid being in the candy store. Like, you want it so much, and as soon as you don't get it, there's something angry about it. And this poem is about that, is about desire, but as a racialized person, and how much the expectations of what your desire should look like prevents you from ever feeling comfortable in your desire. So this is called Country of Desire. In those moments of wanting, feet stay unplanted. I could have lay on these concrete slabs, legs split, broken or carved out like borders around this country of desire. If our bodies together is a map, it is muscles and fat, it is death by aristocrat, it is lines of blood and veins so vain, I must fight to unstick myself from your flesh. And watch this planet crumble. Weak and humbled, my heart took a tumble. And in between mumbles of wanting, I wished I'd never folded our map. So I didn't have to see these creases on my skin, so I didn't have to remember the directions to my empty womb. Why is it that everything is forgotten but passion personified in palms and nerves? They can never recognize our land where rushed blood is not blushed, but hushed fucks are flushed away. We are purple and bruised. My face is your face, is my face eclipsed. And if country meant anything to us, a touch from belly to thigh could have sucked us into a tropical swamp. Your unnamed love could have collected in the folds of my wet skin. It was only when my lips were wrapped around you did I sense my country, did I start to ask why, did I smell the lie that neither of our languages are real. We knew we should never have prayed with these tongues, and so we used them only to sin. And if you could pant beside me now, I would admire the map in all its shades of brown and black and curls and curves and oceans of sweat. But loving is digging. So look behind me and see the graves lined up for days where this plain is unsettled, unpaved. They used to call me brave, but I lost all that I gave. I loved so hard, I left both our bare bodies 6 feet under. Will you dig us up again? Thank you.
Wow. It's a real privilege. I'm going to be swapping my hat a little bit. And I'm not actually sure what I should be reading at all after that. but it's truly an honor to follow such great writers. I think just a quick thing about this collection. This is a collection of short stories, and despite how small it looks, it took me almost 25 years to write it. And the reason was I planned this collection about 25 years ago, wanting to write about experiences of people who are often seen as backdrops to wars mostly carried out by white men. And it was very much about thinking of how we are told that, these war stories where the good soldier boy goes off to war and either comes back a hero or dies gloriously. And those wars seem to happen always over there. There's a wonderful novelist, Timothy Moe, who said, war begins when the white man arrives, and wars end when he leaves. And of course, we all know that one, very familiar image of generally the American soldier flying into whichever country it is, always in yellow filter, and then flying out, and it doesn't matter the devastation that is left behind. So these stories are very much about various wars. The oldest one is set in the First World War. The most latest or the most recent one in terms of chronology is the Syrian civil war. So it's 100 years. They're set across about 12 countries. So it's just a fairly global collection. And that's probably why it took me so long, because I wanted to get it right. I'm going to read two very quick passages. One is from a story called When the Tigress Hunts. And for those of you who may catch the reference, it's about the Tamil Tigers, and Tamil Tigers maintained a cadre of women suicide bombers. But while I was researching, what struck me was the experience of women at checkposts, not only in Sri Lanka, but many, many places across the world. Many places that we forget to talk about, where checkposts are enforced on women and often children. So I'm just going to read a little tiny section from that, and it's in the voice of this woman who's, the narrator. Amma would show us the saris every night when we were growing up, to remind us of Appa, who never returned from the city. He disappeared into the soldiers' prison soon after, and we had no photographs to remember his name. So every night, before we went to sleep, Amma would open the trunk in the corner of the room and take out the saris for us. The blue one for Danu, and the pink one for the baby, he said. Amma would tell us, even though we already knew. The three of us would sit on the floor, holding the saris carefully, gently in our laps. We would run our fingers over that soft, shiny cloth, trying in vain to picture the man who had bought them for us. Then Amma would replace them in the trunk and kiss us goodnight. The saris were gone, I suddenly remembered, or left behind in the house. Chitti, the saris, Appa's saris, where are they? I whispered. They were in the trunk in the corner. The trunk was open. Nothing was in there, Chitti whispered back. The soldiers must have taken them. In the darkness, she ran her fingers under my eyes, along my cheeks, checking for tears. Cry, my darling daughter, please cry, she whispered again and again, putting the tune of the lullaby to her words. But no tears fell, not then, not ever. Strange, I think of things from so long ago tonight. Chitti is dead. One of the bombs that fall from the planes killed her in the forest. Many others died also. No tigers, of course. Tigers are too smart to be caught in the forest by bombs from the sky. I'm alone now, but I'm not afraid. Not even of cavity searches, even though Chitti wept for me each time it happened. I think all men do those. The soldiers, the drunken ones at the camp, and even the tigers. With their fingers and other things. It hurts each time. But pain can be forgotten if you try hard. If you think of something else. And then pain, even fear, fades away. Like darkness at dawn. And I'm going to pick up from a story further down, and that's it's called Friday Morning Coffee, and it's the story of one of the survivors from the Bosnian genocide, a woman who's looking back. And it's called Friday Morning Coffee because a few years ago there was a research project which went around Bosnia asking women who had lost their husbands and other men in their families, but primarily their husbands, during the genocide. And they said, what did they miss most? And the dominant, the most common answer they gave was they missed having coffee together. So this is in Nusrata's voice. Nusrata has survived the genocide. She has moved to another country, and she has brought with her her daughter, who is now a grown-up and is a child of the genocide. Nusrata looks back at her, and so I begin here. They told her it's the worst thing that can happen to a woman. But she knows that is untrue. The living tell the stories. The living keep the memories. The living raise the children. And it is the living who choose which stories, memories, and names are told to the children. Nusreta knows this. Death is the worst thing that can happen to anyone. This knowledge has reknitted her, helped her ensure that Ida is strong, happy, intact. Perhaps she thinks that makes her fortunate. So just putting back, there's an awful lot of rage in that book. But I've now realized that the rage comes from the injustices I take on when I see them happen to those I love. So as the number of those I love grows, the rage grows too. So hence, these are stories of war, but they're primarily stories of love. So I'm going to now open it up for some conversations. And I had this question sitting in my head when we were before thinking about it and talking, and that's, where did your ideas come from? Because they're such powerful work. What is it? Where is the wellspring of your creative work?
I love the notion of a wellspring. Just like, where do we go? I think that, and I love this sense of kind of having this kind of beating, this kind of, I kind of feel incredibly just like mortal in that sense of just like I'm aware of my own kind of humanity and mortality. And I love that sense of kind of what kind of brings me to the page. And I think, and what I was enjoying also about Simran and Mymona listening to your works as well is that this kind of eye, or this clear-cut eye on your perspective, is that I'm interested in kind of human connection. I'm interested in that desire wire and just kind of where you're pulled to, both in the big sense, in desiring who you love, who you want, but kind of what you want, but also then, your kind of small bits, like your morning coffee shared with somebody. And so I think that there's this sense of kind of not necessarily wanting to write the world, but definitely being drawn to the page to go, here's what I see. Here's what I see. This is what I see. This is kind of my lens, my perspective. Here are my flaws with it. Here are my short sights. Here are where I cut corners or whatever that might be, and trying to kind of pack them into that, that kind of beautiful form that is poetry.
Yeah, that's quite interesting what you're saying about the eye, because I have a poet friend, Elisha, who she's like one of those people who I'm like, it doesn't matter how much I hate what I've written, I will share it with her and nobody else. And the other day we were sitting and we were talking about how some of our writing has become a bit similar, even though we're very different people. And one thing I realized was that she's a very visual person, and so that eye comes like she sees something in her mind and that's coming through on the page. I'm not a visual person at all. If you ask me to see an apple, I'm like just seeing the word apple. So I can't see anything when I close my eyes, but I feel it all in my body. So when I'm writing, we might be writing about something really similar or have a similar image or perspective, but I can't see it at all. I'm just completely in my body. So if you're asking about the wellspring, it's just this. I just see it in my body, feel it in my body. And
The body is your wellspring.
yeah.
That's pretty powerful. That's really powerful.
I think it's interesting what you're saying, Mymona, because something I was writing down about all three of you, and thank you, by the way. Like I had too much to kind of learn from, but all three of you have such a caretaking voice at different points. There was a lot going on, but when you were reading, Mymona, I just kept feeling this sense of you taking care of everything you're watching with the way that you wrote. So that was like beautiful to hear about. And I was also I was wondering about the music that you chose, and I was wondering if you can tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, I can. If it was up to me and I had, I could do whatever I wanted, I'd have made you all sit through the 6-minute song of Ethel Cain's House of Psychotic Women and made you all really uncomfortable. Because I think most of the time I read to feel a bit uncomfortable. But I didn't make you do that. But yeah, that was the first 2 minutes of the songs. When I was writing that, I was trying to make a soundscape of my family just being themselves, which is incredibly loud. But then I thought, I wasn't really able to do that. So I was looking for a song that kind of encapsulated that rage, but also a bit of that like insanity. If you don't have anywhere to put your rage, and you just feel crazy. So that was the sound, yeah. Thanks for asking.
I've got lots of ideas, so just go ahead.
I was going to say it's also kind of, if we're thinking about a stream and kind of spring, and then kind of Simran from you, I kind of gathered that this, and actually the link between both your work is that this idea of this kind of landscapes in these cities and where you're trying to locate yourselves within them. I think like having this sense of a street and having that real kind of pivotal moment and like doing it in the form of a ghazal was so delicious because we kept getting this. And the penultimate line, I was like, there's kind of something quite colloquial that you were kind of like, so what will it be or what is it? I was just like, whoa, that's kind of wonderful to have that sense of kind of conversation. And yeah, just conversation both with the people in those landscapes and then also the city itself and who it kind of the boxes it forces you into. And also what you find in the confinements of that is kind of like, Simran, I got this sense of kind of just pulsing. And I love that both the city that you're contending with in its kind of safety, but also then its, its violences and its kind of small and big ways of what it seems like your kind of, your poetic voice is trying to reckon with. It's so relatable. And I think that that's important. So I love this sense of them being able to kind of see these locations of where you are, both in being stated and also having spoken to you before about kind of these locations that you're in and crossing into. I just thought, that's really powerful because then, the kind of, the landscape then it's got a pulse. It's got a heartbeat. It's got this going on.
I'm going to pick up something that I've really been thinking about with all your work. And for me, I don't write poetry. I work squarely in prose. But I chose the short story form for this because I really wanted it to be layered but not obvious. And it just felt like these stories deserved their own specific little canvases rather than a novel. So I'm just thinking about your works. And how do you come to the form? So, we had a guzzle, we had a sonnet, so very different forms. And it's not as if you only stick to one particular form in itself, whether it's the guzzle or the sonnet. You kind of move around. And again, Simran, with yours that we saw, very experimental. Well, how do you come to those decisions? Because I think, and this is something I wanted to think about, and we were talking about backstage, I want to hear about writers, women writers who are minoritized in different ways, especially, but any writer who is minoritized. I want us to think about their process and their craft, because we often don't. I barely ever get asked questions about my craft, by the way. I always get asked questions about myself, which is really boring. And I really want to know how are these decisions made, because the work, all of your work, is so powerful and so resonant, and it's just been incredibly moving and joyful to hear you. So tell us about this.
I really love that question. Thank you for asking that, because that's the kind of question that I hope to one day answer better. Right now, I have a struggle between, so the way this is written is prose, but it's lyrical prose, and I sometimes write poetry, but if I'm being quite honest, I don't understand form at all. I don't understand the purpose of a stanza. I don't understand even the purpose of punctuation. Sometimes it doesn't always make any real sense to me. I think when you have something to say, you just have to say it. So for me, I'm still figuring out what a form really even is. So I currently, as you said, it's very experimental, because I want to start from scratch and try to understand from scratch. And from scratch, I just runs on and on and on. So I think I really, really love that question. I'm really excited to hear about you guys and what form means to you, because I'm still learning. So, yeah.
I've got a really boring answer. It's just accessible to me. With time and other responsibilities, a poem I can just write on my bus ride to work, and then maybe look at it on the bus ride back. And then if I like it, maybe share it with somebody and they'll read it on their bus ride. And then by the end of the month, I might send it to someone after. So for me, that's kind of where I came into poetry. And now it's been about 3 or 4 years that I've been writing and sharing and getting into anthologies, thankfully. And I'm thinking about and working on short stories and possibly other forms. But 3 years ago, I would not have it. I would be like, when the hell am I going to do that? So, boring answer. But yeah, it's just accessible. But it's a good question.
I love that. Dogo, I have a follow-up question for you. Where do you...
Where do I work?
Where do I... because writing on a bus is amazing. Writing or using your commute journeys to write there and back. It's just fantastic. And so I kind of am like, do you have an idea, or can you just write anywhere? Writing on public transport and around other people. I just think I get that thing where I'm like, don't look at these beautiful, precious words. They're unfinished and they're mine.
Usually nobody's really looking at me on the bus. Everyone's tired, but then so much is happening. And also it's usually quite rubbish when I've written it on the bus. But like you were saying before about capturing a perspective, that's a time when you can do that, and nobody's asking you to do anything else other than get to where you need to go. Whereas when you're at home, and then you kind of do the procrastination thing where you tell yourself there's something else I could be doing, instead of trying to make up this made-up world. So it's, but I can't remember your question, but yeah, it just happens.
Do you have a perfect place that either of you two would write in as well, and Sunny as well? Do you have? Because I think as I've grown in my practice, I'm called to the form of poetry because I'm a chatterbox, and it forces me to be economical. It's like, girl, say the thing, put the thing on the paper, say the thing. And as I learn more about the form and kind of, you grow in you kind of have respect for the discipline. And I think for a long time I didn't want to read the canon because I thought, what use is this to me? It kind of stands for everything I don't care about, white, male, etc., etc. But unfortunately, I kind of by virtue of, where I'm from and where I've grown up, I have the English language and only the English language, personally for me, at my disposal. So, you better get to reading. But there is something around going in a kind of writing practice and going, okay, actually, if it's this form I'm picking, then I'm going to make it as pleasurable and as interesting an experience for me as I can possibly do. Because some of the stuff that I'm reckoning with on the page is not, it's not easy. It is, full of these large themes and these abstractions of kind of love and rage and community and history and racism and et cetera, et cetera. So to kind of pull it back, I want to ask kind of where the beautiful places that you might, or maybe your favorites or your ideal spots of writing are.
Mine is really boring. I write at home. I have gone on one writing residency in my entire life for 3 weeks, and they were the 3 most miserable weeks of my life. I called up every friend of mine weeping at 2 a.m. going, I can't do this. This is terrible. All these people who are so smart and they keep talking about writing, and I just am terrified to be out of my room. So I tend to write at home. I have my desk, and I have my computer, and I have books that sort of are piled up around me, and it's a little fort of just books, and I feel happy writing there.
I'm similar to you, Mymona. I don't have really any perfect place at all. Every place I write in tends to be like transitional and like just a couple of lines somewhere, and it's really rare to get a moment to sit down and put it all together because it's just way too much to do in a day. So I'm yet to find a perfect place. I'm literally trying to think of something, and it's like just locations racing along. So yeah, I always in transition.
Esme, what's yours?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's like it's not boring at home. But, I have a leather-bound book and a fountain pen that's lilac and no one else is allowed to use it. And it goes on paper first and then it gets typed up and it's this kind of, there's a kind of ceremony, there's a ritual around it now. I do not write on the tube. I do not write on the tube. Or the bus, unfortunately. I get travel sick on the bus, so I kind of think every time my head is down, you feel it. But there's a kind of niceness about... I think I'm opposite to you, Sunny, where my table was clean. So there's something about, okay, I come to a clean desk. There's got to be a lot of light or kind of, a candle burning. There's kind of, it's a mood setting. It's a kind of, getting in, I think that, that writer's zone where you can kind of just let the thoughts go. Because the judgmental voice will come in my head. So better make a home like a nice space for her. If she's going to come in and be rude. That writing sucks, It's kind of, okay, well, sit down here for a little while, see how you feel. So, yeah.
It's quite interesting what you were saying about a transitional place because, and then, you picked up on us writing about the city, a place, and lots of things are happening. I had a very specific question for you when I read your piece. Tell us about the parrot. That's not a question, but tell us about the parrot.
Yeah, the parrot is... so the piece in general was a longer story. And the parrot is much more of a character. But the parrot is essentially something that's supposed to hold what I can't. I find it really hard to be angry. I'm always that person. I'm like, I'm sad before I'm angry. So that's where I go. But recently I'm trying. And for me to be angry, it kind of like, it's very dramatic and angsty, but it like kind of broke who I was. So I'm slowly rebuilding. I'm still figuring it out because I'm not as sad anymore. So yay. But I'm more angry. But the parrot for me was a really silly creature that you wouldn't necessarily always associate with rage. But it's like it makes this like screeching noise, which is really irritating and squawky. And I really liked that because there are moments where I can be like that, where like I talk a lot. I'm always really loud and slightly socially unaware where I just like, if I'm talking. Like I'm always getting shushed and sometimes it's actually very valid because I genuinely just don't. And a parrot is somewhat like that. A parrot is also, with the imitation. A lot of what I was doing for a long time was imitation. So I didn't know what the hell I was. So that was kind of the broken parrot. And it's not in here, but the parrot becomes kind of like a mentor for the character, leads her to a different place, and is able to protect and rage for her in a way that the narrator just couldn't, because it just wasn't. Sometimes what you feel is just not even human. You know, it is animalistic. It is a bit like, I'm not going to make the sound of a parrot, but like, you know, like that screeching noise. And so that's what it was for me. It was the screech. It was the sound, and that visceral, that feature specifically was why I wanted to write about a parrot. Thank you for the question.
You know, it's just struck me because we've kind of skirted around this idea of expressing rage, and you know, Esme, you said earlier, you know, about racialized and gendered and classed and all the ways that who gets to be angry is controlled and regulated. I didn't grow up in this country. I grew up in India, and I had my grandmother. By the way, for whom the Chalak Prize is named, my grandmother's name was Chalak. And she was magnificent. She was tiny. She was about 4'7". She was tiny. And after she died, I ran into somebody who said she was a towering presence. And mostly because when she flew into a rage, I think everybody in the neighborhood could hear it and shake. And so I grew up with this kind of idea of women who could rage. And when I moved out of India, was the first time it struck me that women aren't supposed to get angry. And it really was this process of boxing up my rage and capacity to rage. And so I just really wonder how you guys ended up thinking about, you said very poignantly, very movingly, about you broke yourself. And so what happens with that anger and the rage? How do you learn to express it on the page? Not necessarily in life, because we know in life we have to monitor and protect ourselves as to where and how we can rage. So how do you channel that?
That's a really beautiful question. And I think actually, Simran, something you were saying about this, you know, this notion of kind of taking on different voices in order to kind of find your way back to that kind of that rage. And I think a lot of the time rage sits with kind of quiet, or rage sits with loudness, and then kind of quiet then sits with this kind of sense of calm. There's this kind of, I think it's a stereotype. I think it is a stereotype, but I guess quite a niche one. I think amongst, a friend and I talk about this sense of kind of, sometimes there's a kind of figure in black cinema or films with black characters in, where this kind of very like tight-shouldered, eyes wide, tight-lipped, kind of elderly black woman, and there's this sense of kind of like, you know, that kind of there's a rage that's kind of seething underneath, and yet no kind of route to express. And I think there's this sense of wanting to kind of use writing, at least as a forum, to go, okay, there's a whole spectrum of emotions. I can write about a whole range of things, but particularly when it comes to anger and that kind of, you know, those distasteful kind of things that, you know, that leave this kind of discomfort in you, and yet also kind of send you into kind of action. It's kind of nice to be able to go there with some sense of perspective, or some sense of trying, you know, if I try on a voice that is more angry than my own, or if I'm accessing or tapping into, you know, an instance of racism, and I want to kind of use a kind of metaphor to describe it, but kind of what's that feeling, and how might this character or how might this voice then, you know, change? And it was wonderful, because it's a very kind of, it's a beautiful way to kind of permiss yourself. But it is a lot of reckoning, because I always think that kind of that sense of loudness, and, you know, we've all got our relationships with loud and quiet, and, you know, kind of where that anger and rage sits. But it's also really fun to kind of like rage on the streets with your friends. And I think, you know, protest is important in that regard. It's really nice to be able to just kind of yell and scream and shout at the top of your lungs, in full force with a group, not necessarily just into the kind of abyss, because you know, there's a seeing that happens there. Yeah.
I really like what you were saying about trying. Like in your craft, you're trying to reckon with yourself. You're trying to place that rage in a way that fits on the page, or the stage, or wherever. And I think for me, like I said before when we were in the writing collective, and people were like, "Oh, we're going to write about love," and I was like, "Ew." For me, that rage allowed me to experiment writing about a different theme, and to, whenever I write and I'm like, "Oh, this is coming from a place of rage," I'll experiment with form or like what it looks like on the page and different kinds of things. And I think if I'm not so moved viscerally and angrily, I can't play so much. And then during that play, one, it calms me down, and two, it feels like, okay, the rage is going somewhere, it's sending a message, and maybe it'll speak to someone else as well.
Yeah, I love what you're both saying. Like, I kept thinking while you both were speaking, so much of it is just falling down and stumbling. And so I think something that's really important is when you're writing and expressing that is sometimes a lot of, I don't know if you guys relate, but a lot of what I do, it can be really dense, and it doesn't always make sense on the page. But one thing that I love to do is I just leave it. Because even if it doesn't make sense, even if it seems like too much for somebody else, it's always just so beautiful that you did it for yourself and you left it there. And for instance, like Hajar Press, them being this amazing publisher who is willing to see people on that level, I don't think my story would have gone anywhere else. Really, really, really. But Hajar Press had the guts, the capacity to put that in there because it is dense, it is a lot, and it is really messy. But I love that they understood why it was left that way. They saw that. So I think I just feel really lucky that even when it doesn't make sense on the page, people want to hear it. There's space for that. And rage is one of those beautiful things that people are willing to see the messiness of. So, yeah, that's just what I was thinking.
I would have never thought that it doesn't make sense on the page because it so much does. It's also very crafted and finely crafted rage. So please don't run that one down by going, oh, it doesn't make sense. It does. Oh, it so does. I think we are running towards the end of the session, so we have time for some questions. I'm going to pass my mic over. Is that fair, Noor? Okay.
Thank you. So we have about 15 minutes for questions. And so if you have a burning question, kindly keep it somewhat brief so that we can take a few. And then our writers will also be signing their books at the back. And you can you can have a chat, you can ask more questions. So there will be time for everybody. So can I have a show of hands of anyone who has a question at the moment? Yeah?
Thank you. Just to the four of you, I also want to say thank you. It's been lovely to hear such a diverse range whilst we're looking at this spectrum. So throughout, I've been maintaining this spectrum of individualistic anger and maybe more communal rage. Okay. What I'd like to ask to the four of you, perhaps it might incite a little discussion, but it would be around what is the individualistic version of love, therefore? Because if love is up here with community and as is rage, and then we have anger down at the individual, what does love maybe trickle down to in that individual experience? Thank you.
That was a difficult question. Wow. I don't see love as necessarily an individualistic thing, because I think when we love, it's about care, it's about giving. And the moment we start with that, then it's, in some ways, it's about removing the ego out of that equation. So for me, love is very much a collective act. It's a community. It's a shared act, even if it is linked to another individual. It's still, and I don't think we as individuals, and this is my cultural background talking, we don't exist as sort of hyper-individuated beings. We exist in a community. So I don't see love in that kind of separate space of completely being removed from the collective. If you were to say what is love, I think love is caring, but love is action, and love is justice. And it's ensuring that action and care go into ensuring justice for me. Because we can't have anything that we call love without, which ignores injustice or which is founded in injustice. It's not love. So,
wow, very well put. I think I'm kind of in a similar vein in the sense of love, and even a lot of the rage is a communal thing. It comes from someone, is shared, or we have like an innate instinct to share it. Even if you're not a writer, you want to share those feelings. But one of the poems that I was writing about desire, and I think that is individual, that is within you, and it's only when it's shared does it start to be possibly love or something else. And I think it's quite interesting when people write about desire and we think it's about multiple people because you might desire someone or something, but actually it's still just you. It doesn't have anything to actually do with somebody else until it's something else. I can't remember your question, but I hope that answers it.
I don't actually have anything to say.
This is a cheat if I answer this, because the person that I love asked me the question. So I'm like, there's not a cheat, but I think that there's something. What do I feel? I think love is safety and love is care. And I think love is this kind of real sense of connection, is that there's a sense of, like I think just kind of adding on to what's already been said, is that, there's this sense of that you are not the only person that's existing and that you are kind of part of this kind of tapestry. Your internal world is busy and complicated, and also other people's are as well. And that's a wonderful thing about writing, is that then you come to the page and you write about something that's incredibly specific but carries this sense of universality, which is, people then can connect with. So yeah.
Can I just quickly add to that? Just I remembered something that is written in the the editor's note by Farah, who's amazing, and she writes about how rage comes from a place of love. Like, you would never be that angry if you didn't love the thing or the person. And it's really interesting. I was talking to a friend the other day, and we kind of was coming up with a theory where it's like, maybe the honeymoon period is actually because you don't actually love that person yet. You're just happy that they're there and they're interesting and exciting. And it's only when you love them that you're like, oh yeah, now I can be angry at you. Yeah, we can sit with that.
I'm here for that.
Do we have any more questions?
Got one here.
Thank you all. I think your rage sounds very graceful and nice to listen to in a strange way. And I'm curious about when you all are writing, if the rage sounds like what people would envision when they typically think about rage.
Thank you for that. When I'm writing, it's probably the most, when I'm writing, my rage sounds like a howl. There are many disturbing sounds that come out of my office depending on what I'm writing. And they do go from quiet sobs to just screams and howls of rage. For me, at least, the part of the challenge with writing rage is to somehow give it form where it is crafted to sit on the page, not necessarily as a howl, but as a kind of burning ember that the reader can pick up and sort of flame up into an inferno. But I think it's again, it's a way of connecting my rage, my love, with hopefully the reader who can say, okay, I feel this, and I'm going to run with it. But yeah, it doesn't sound very graceful at all.
I like the imagery of the embers and all of that. I was going to say, I was thinking actually of water. When I think of rage, it's like hugging water in that, well, you can't actually hug water, right? Because then you just drown. So that's what rage is to me. It's hugging water. It's once you accept it, there's no shallow level of it for me. It's like you're just going to submerge and that's it, you're sinking. But it doesn't always have to be a bad sinking. Sometimes a very necessary one where you can just be held in a more still place. So for me, it's more on that side.
Yeah, I think as you asked your question, I was like, rage on the page. Sometimes, and I think when I was still kind of, I don't know, still writing a few years ago, I was like thinking about this idea of kind of rage turning, like not getting what you want and then getting upset and getting angry and getting frustrated, and rage then looking a bit petulant. And whilst there's a kind of element of fun in that, because it's, it kind of feels almost childlike. And there's something good about honouring that. I just thought actually you've got kind of more of a commitment that you have to make to the world than to throw your toys out the pram. And so I think now rage then looks, it feels meandering and kind of, Simran, actually when you were talking about this idea of like, I don't know, I kind of identify with that feeling, although no, we do know, because it feels meandering and like it goes everywhere and it's like, and another thing as you keep going. But actually when you come to it, of course we're angry. Of course that we are rageful, and we, it's, I don't know, we are just in a position where that is a kind of daily, hourly, minute by minute thing. So as it comes to the page, of course, it feels like onslaught, and then you make sense of how it is, and that kind of feels wonderful.
Thank you for referring to me as graceful. I cleaned up for you. No, it's really ugly, usually. Like at the point of writing, when I'm first writing about something, it's just horrible and ugly, and sometimes a little bit shameful, like, oh my God, I can't believe I feel all of this. But you were saying about, like, you think it doesn't make any sense, but in the middle of asking why it doesn't make sense, you're making sense of it. And I think that's part of the reason why we write about it, is because, and a lot of my poetry has a lot of questions, because that's what I'm asking as I'm trying to figure it out. And when I first started writing, I also saw it as acting when I'm reading my work and doing spoken word and things like that. And so there were times where I'd be screaming on stage, and I kind of miss doing that. But yeah.
That's so punk. I'm like screaming at poetry performances.
Yeah, but then just being like, oh, that wasn't me. That was, the actor. That was the character. That was Patricia.
We need Patricia back.
We have one more.
Thank you very much for all of what you shared. It's really moved me a lot. And I don't even know if I'm a writer, because I write for myself. At least I used to. And I feel like right now I'm in a period of time when I'm kind of scared to write, because it's kind of like deepening something that is really profound, and then it's really kind of time consuming. It's a really negative word, but I hope you get what I mean. It's like unpacking a lot, and I think that's very brave what you're doing, and also please tell me how to be more brave, I guess. How can I, really without judging myself too much, be able to put that on paper, and even publishing, that's another step. I mean, how did you transition from, I guess, writing in your own room and then, getting this out in the world? And also, there's a lot to ask, but I'm also a non-native English speaker, and I felt that it was even more comforting writing in another language that is not even my own. I kind of think I wrote poetry, but I've never followed the rules nor the codes. So, yeah, what is writing? What is poetry? Thank you.
I really thank you for that. That was incredibly brave as well. And as soon as you were speaking, I wanted to say to you, you are a writer. That sounds exactly like a writer to me. So firstly, it sounds like you already are a writer. And the next part would be, sometimes even if something is published, you still go back and forth, right? You still go back to the period of you're still in your room, and maybe then you get opportunity to talk. I'm very grateful I have that right now, but it's never forever. So sometimes, there's so much to say. That was such a great question, but when we think like what is publishing, right? I think it's really important to make sure you're sharing your writing with people who will hold you and who respect and hear what you say. So it can start small. It can start with showing people you love and then growing from that, because I think publishing is not just a straightforward thing just because it's on the page printed and given out to people. That's not the only way that publishing works in my mind anyway. So I think that you sound like you're on track. It sounds like you're going to do something. So I'm excited to hear from you. And the other thing I wanted to tell you is... sorry, my brain is like, oh, yeah, I really hear your fear. I feel it all the time. Sometimes I'm scared of taking myself too seriously, right? Like, I don't know if you relate, but like sometimes you're writing something down, you're like, who am I to be like feeling all of this? Like, let me calm down. But somebody said to me the other day, it's so nice to be able to take yourself seriously when you're a writer. This is the chance to do it. Like, I think we all did it. We all took ourselves seriously, and then you all showed up and you took us seriously. So,
we hope.
Yeah, I don't know if you, so.
They came for the cabaret part.
Yeah, and then they didn't get it.
Not the literary part.
But it's a really great thing to, and like it's brave. It takes a lot of courage, and I think you already did it. To me, you're already a writer. That's exactly what a writer does. They ask a question like that. They show up. So you already did it, for me. So yeah.
I'm going to agree with that. But while you were speaking, I kept thinking of a wonderful poem that I will recommend to you. It's by Selena Godden. And it says, the title is Courage is a Muscle. And the first stanza says, courage is the muscle we use when we speak, if we're being talked over and told we're too weak. And it continues. So I would say courage is a muscle. Just keep doing exactly what you did right now. Just speak, write, the rest will follow.
I think it's great that you asked that question, and I hope you feel good that you asked the question, because it is sometimes scary to ask questions. And like Simran said, that already makes you a writer, just asking the questions. For me, I think I have a difficult relationship with courage, because people always say, oh, you're so brave, you went and stood and talked in front of people. And I'm like, yeah, it's just because I really wanted to. And I think if you really want it, you'll find a way to do it. And there are big words like publishing and anthologies and loads of other things that you're like, oh, I have to do this thing. If you want to do it, you'll do it. And for me, the writing to sharing pipeline is really fun, because I get to have witness. So every single person who reads that, even if I never speak to them, they're a witness to something that I wanted to share. So if you want to share it, if you want to write it, you will do that. And I hope you do. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got one mic. Well, on that note, I think that's thank you so much for being here. We will be, as Noor said, signing copies and books. That is one way of supporting authors, just so you know. Also going to libraries and borrowing our books. So do sign up to your local library. This is my normal pitch. For just supporting every writer, not just me. So please do that, and we will come join you in a few minutes. And thank you so much for being here, and thank you for incredible work.